still think we're going to see at some point $40 in the second half. Frankly, $45 will not shock me this year. I still feel like $50 is going to happen, and it's going to happen at some point next year. It's feeling more and more like it's going to happen in the first half of next year. And 50 is that sort of, elusive but magic number in silver, because if you look at, we talked about technical analysis before. Silver is considered, there may be one other asset, I can't remember what it is, but if you look back, over decades, it's it will be one of the most significant, if not the most significant technical breakout, price breakout of all time, of all assets, simply because the it's taken so long, it will have taken so long to ultimately break past that 50. If you look at all the other metals and all sorts of other assets, they've managed to do that. Silver hasn't yet. So once you break out of 50, I mean, I've heard experts and technical analysts, whom I respect tremendously, say that we're uncharted waters, and it could quickly go, once it breaks through 50 and sustains that, it could quickly go to 70, 80, maybe ultimately even 100. And frankly, given the demand and given what kind of economic environment we might be at that point in time, I would not be surprised, to see it go well beyond that at some point. So ultimately, I mean, my target, and I talk about it in the book, and I justify how I get to this number, is $300 silver, and I'm thinking we're going to get there in some kind of a mania phase. I still think that, but I will say this: I'm surprised, frankly, that I've heard estimates from people I consider very serious, very accomplished analysts talking about ultimately $500 silver. And so I don't feel like I sound that crazy when I talk about 300. So again, that would be in a mania phase, and that depending how quickly we got there, that would wreak havoc, of course, on the whole sort of industrial side of silver use. So anyways, that's something for another day. But be prepared and think about taking some profits. As I say, it's just probably a matter of several months earlier than I kind of expected. I'd been saying for probably since the end of last year, we would see 35 taken out in the first half, and then probably 40 taken out in the second half of this year. We're not at 40 yet, but we're very close. And frankly, if 40 happens sometime soon, or even just in the second half of this year, I will not be surprised at all. And if the momentum keeps up, I think we'll see perhaps even as high as 45 at some point this year. And I've also been saying that that sort of magic $50 level was probably going to be at some point next year. That's obviously looking farther out. It's still kind of where I'm seeing things right now. But the momentum is absolutely there. I've been somewhat surprised to what extent the momentum has kept up. But people are starting to pay attention. Gold has been more in a bit of a consolidation phase, and silver has sort of taken the lead, taken the baton. And you look, if it's kind of been one of these staircase patterns. If you look at how silver has behaved, it was 32. That was a ceiling for a while. The next one seemed to be 34. So once it moved above 34, that ceiling became a floor. So kind of the new step. Once we moved through 36, that became a new step. We're now what I believe is 38 as the next staircase step. And certainly 40 is, like I say, I've been expecting 40 at some point, second half of this year. And I think that will act the same way. Trigger point, probably, because, these big round numbers do tend to have more effect. And at just the way 3,000 in gold or 3,500 in gold, had a bigger effect. And I think you're right. I agree with you. $40 will be a big trigger. Now, it may attempt 40 and then not be able to close above it. And that may be a tougher ceiling to break through for a while, because it's a psychological barrier in this sort of big round number, so to speak. But I agree. Once we get through that, I mean, we'll have come from where we were back, just perhaps the early part of last year. If I remember right, we were somewhere close to about 20 in February or so, and here we are at 38, 39. It's just incredible. It's almost a double already. So it's really quite spectacular. Um, yes, I think that that's going to be a big deal, and you know technical analysis, I agree with you. um, I do like to watch it. I'm not an expert in it, but I do like to watch it. And what I think about technical analysis is that one of the big reasons that it is important, especially let's say for the commodities themselves as opposed to companies or whatever, is that the commodities are heavily traded. And so even if you're I'm not, but if you happen to be a technical analysis skeptic, even a guy like Jim Rogers, who's a big fundamental research kind of guy and so on, he said that he pays some attention to it, and if for no other reason that he knows that there's a big chunk of the market that does pay attention to it, and it's one of these sort of self-fulfilling prophecies. If you reach these these levels, then the buying or the selling, whichever it may be, really starts to kick in. And so that it does have who are subscribers or interested in becoming subscribers to my newsletter, and they're asking, what kinds of things do you cover? Do you think that it's we're too far along? How would you allocate? Now, I'm not an investment advisor, so I can't give that kind of advice. I only tell people, kind of how I see things for myself and how I would handle things for myself. But there is absolutely a lot more interest and questions about silver itself, about allocating to the more speculative end of silver. So the developers, the explorers, even the pre-discovery explorers, and I've honestly, like, I have seen a group of stocks in the portfolio from January. If you take a certain handful of stocks, they're up on average 60%. This is, I'm going to say, probably 8 or 9 different stocks are up on average 60%. Some of them, one in particular, one of the standouts was, and I was a little bit late on that, my fault, but I had followed this company right around the sort of 25 to 30 cent price range. I ended up recommending it around 45 or 47 cents, I believe, and it made it to $1.20, and it took about 6 weeks. It was just unreal. I've not seen anything like this for quite some time. I'm going to say the last time would have probably been in the months, sort of leading up to April of 2011, when silver went to 49 and change, and touched that or was close to touching that $50 level for the second time in history. But I think we have a very different environment now. We're now facing structural deficits in silver, and supply is nowhere near close to coming to meet any of these deficits. The only way these deficits have been met has been by drawing down on above ground inventories. Those continue to stay very low. So we have a fundamentally very strong case for early days in the silver bull market. And I mean, you know, again, the bottom line, or let's say the takeaway from this is it's certainly not too late. It has begun to become what I feel is a little bit frothy in sort of this early part. I think, if we're honestly actually a little bit lucky, we might get a little bit of a correction, or at least a consolidation for a little while.